Hi, I'm Rajan Krishnaswami, and this is Mark Salman, and together we're the Krishnaswami Salman duo, and we're playing a recital on May 29th at Townhall at 7:30 p.m., and we're excited to share that with you today, a little preview. So we're going to be playing three sort of larger works, three sonatas by Shostakovich, Debussy, and Chopin. Right after the Shostakovich, we'll be playing three smaller works, one by Fauré, one by Tchaikovsky, and one by Liszt. And I think the interesting thing about it is the variety of color that's going to be introduced in these three different pieces.
For me, it's sort of like they have such distinct personalities. Like if you were to take three pieces from the sort of cello and piano duo repertoire, you almost couldn't find pieces that are so distinct and so representative of their composers and so representative of their age and their time and the sort of artistic movements of the time that they kind of come out of.
Yeah,
they all kind of connect and come and share a lot of traditions, but they still kind of come at them from very different angles. Whereas often, if we took something like if we did a Beethoven and a Brahms sonata, they would be so much from the same sort of artistic impulse that there wouldn't be that same sort of contrast that there would be with all of these. And so even though they're all sonatas and they're all sort of referring to that same sort of form and referring back to what Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn did, they're really have incredibly distinct personalities.
So we start off with the Shostakovich Sonata, which is written in the 1930s.
Oh, well, it has all of his sort of, his typical kind of like, sarcasm and irony, and it's, what should I say? The last movement is almost intentionally sort of childish in its little almost nursery rhyme theme, but is full of these sort of dark undercurrents, just again typical of Shostakovich.
And the first movement, which has that, when it gets the recapitulation where it repeats the stuff that you hear at the beginning of the piece, this time he gets it wrong. He does the second theme first and the first theme second. And the first theme is macabre. It's very slow and completely changed around, and it sounds very sort of stark.
Very slow.
Slow, yeah.
I mean, as slow as you possibly can play it.
Right. So, and then it has a very sort of bombastic, energetic second movement.
Right.
Maybe we should play a little sample of that. Let's play a little of that. So that's a little sample of the energy that's there in the Shostakovich. So then we go to three shorter pieces. We'll be playing a piece by Fauré, who's sort of an early impressionist or late romantic. I think Debussy's music in a large way came out of what Fauré was doing with the sort of French style, sort of lighter into the string.
The harmonic innovations that Fauré had.
So we'll be playing the Sicilienne by Fauré. And then after that, we'll play a little ditty by Tchaikovsky that's called Valse Sentimentale, and it's a very soulful little sort of appetizer. And then Liszt, right?
Right, the second elegy. And this is kind of from some of these pieces that Liszt wrote late in his life. Often very small pieces, often very say harmonically innovative. With a really, a kind of a unique exploration of sort of the romantic character. Often there's more of a sort of a darkness and seriousness than there might have been in some of his early pieces, though this piece is actually particularly just sort of atmospheric and beautiful, though it does have a, kind of a big climax in the middle.
And I think that piece leads particularly well into the Debussy because it has a very sort of ethereal language, although the harmonic language is completely different, and even the vocabulary than Debussy.
Though earlier Debussy comes directly out of the late Liszt pieces. In fact, Liszt in some of these late pieces actually uses typical Debussy things like whole tone scales and that type of stuff shows up.
So it'll be nice to bring the Debussy right out of that Liszt piece.
And also the improvisatory character, some of the Liszt stuff shows up in the sort of rhapsodic sort of feel of the Debussy.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Debussy sonata is one of the three last sonatas that he wrote in his life. It's from the 1915, I believe, and it has a very different character than anything else on the program. Well, except I guess coming out of the list, you'll see the parallels.
Well, it's somewhere between the Liszt and the Shostakovich, you know, because the Debussy has a great deal of sort of this much lighter kind of irony. You know, the Shostakovich has a bitter irony to it, and this is a much more, you know, French, coming out of the sort of the Impressionists, the mood that you'd get out of some of the later Impressionist and Post-Impressionist paintings sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. There's even a marking in my part that says to play it ironically at one point in the second movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's always changing from one thing to another. You don't expect it, and it doesn't build up to these sort of typical climaxes, you think. And also, though the textures are almost, you know, almost trying to find out what's the most bizarre texture he could make between the cello and piano. Use a lot of pizzicato and a lot of like really quiet staccato in the bass and the piano, and it's actually really maybe the most interesting as far as its interaction between the instruments.
Sure.
And of course Debussy was I mean, his great innovation, of course, was using the colors of the instruments in new and you know, innovative ways.
Yeah. And in fact, the second movement is supposedly a picture of the Pierrot character, the clown character from, well, the famous clown character. So it's very it's almost funny in some ways. Anyway, so let's play just a little sample of the first movement to show the different colors that are brought out by Debussy. And the final piece on the program is the great Chopin Cello Sonata. Now, he wrote almost exclusively for piano, but he has this one sonata for cello and piano that's really a marvelous work. Yeah, the cello writing isn't spectacular, but the music is truly spectacular.
Is very pianistic. I mean, all of Chopin is very pianistic, and compared to what he did in his solo stuff, since he didn't have to put all the music carried by the piano, it's not nearly as difficult.
I mean, the cello carries a lot of the melodies, but it's very heavy on the piano side of things.
Yeah, there's a lot more notes than there usually would be in a part.
In a piano part, yeah. That's a duo, right?
Oh, definitely.
So, and it has one of the most beautiful movements ever written for any instrument, in my opinion. The third movement is just wonderful, wonderfully musical and beautiful. Let's play a little sample of that.
So it's kind of like Chopin's the last of his great nocturnes, which he wrote all through his career. So, and there's a sort of a harmonic sophistication and a melodic structure sophistication that he developed in his late music. I mean, this is basically his last piece, his last big piece. I mean, he wrote a few things. He was very ill after this and wrote a few short pieces, but this is the last thing he ever did.
We're glad he did it. So do come join us for this recital. We're really excited to share it with you. And the proceeds of the recital will benefit Simple Measures. Join us on Friday, May 29th at 7:30 p.m. at Townhall.